literature, novel study, so the components of an English program: literature, novel study, writing composition, and sometimes your grammar and composition book will say grammar and composition, but if you don't do a lot of the compositions that are listed in there as assignments, then you haven't fulfilled the requirement just because the book says that, the consumable says that. So I want to see actual samples of writing. And then grammar, there has to be some kind of grammar study, vocabulary, and a research paper. On to foreign language. Foreign language is a minimum of 20 credits. A lot of universities are now requiring 30, so check where your student is interested in going and see if that's a requirement for high school to have 30 credits. It's a good thing to aim for, but for a requirement for graduation is only 20. Whatever language, it must be taught in 2 consecutive years with no semester break in between. So if you do your Spanish 1 in grade 9, you need to do your Spanish 2 in grade 10, not grade 11. It needs to be consecutive years that the language. And ASL is a accepted language. Any of the other foreign languages, French, Spanish, German, Italian, we've even had people do Dutch. So whatever foreign language, but it needs to be consecutive. Mathematics, it's a minimum of 30 credits. The base requirement is Algebra 1, followed by Geometry and Algebra 2. You can do those out of order. You can do Algebra 1, Algebra 2, then your Geometry. But that's the basic requirement for college prep. If you came in out of junior high with a high school level Algebra 1 and you got at least a B or above, you can have that put on your transcript. Okay. Physical education. There's a minimum of 20 credits, and again, I like to mention the log of hours. 64 hours of activity gets 5 credits. If you are doing something at the high school, again, they give the transcript and you don't have to log the hours. But over the course of your high school career, you need 20 credits on the transcript. If you do more than 20 credits, it falls in the elective category. Science, it's a minimum of 20 credits of lab sciences. A lab is considered a dissection or mathematical application of science, and there has to be labs. There has to be physical labs. You can do some virtual labs, but there has to be some hands-on lab work in the class. And so the basic requirement is biology. A lot of times colleges want to see physics or chemistry after that, but the basic requirement is biology, and then you could have physics, chemistry, you could have anatomy and physiology, you could have, astronomy, there's a lot of geology, but it's got to have lab work for that to qualify it for that second lab science. But then you need to also consider what your college wants, and typically they're going to want chemistry, and if you're going into engineering or some other kind of mathematical field, you'll want the chemistry and the physics. The other requirement in social studies, minimum of 10 credits in world history, 10 in U.S. history, 5 in American government, and 5 in economics. And it's usually taught in that order. You typically want your U.S. history in the same year that you're doing the American Lit component in your English. But it doesn't have to be in that order, but however it works out, it's good to pair the U.S. history with the American Lit. American government and economics is typically done in grade 12 when you're doing British Lit. Then visual and performing arts, it's a minimum of 10 credits, that's 2 semesters, and the textbook needs to be a significant portion of the course. So if you were taking photography, for example, you can't just go out and shoot a bunch of pictures and think that's a photography course. You need to have a textbook. You need to have some academic constraints on your creativity. You need to be learning about perspective and about all the different components of a photography class if you were to take it in a regular high school. The difficulty with fine arts and music, though, if you're taking like guitar lesson, for example, half-hour a week, you might have your guitar lesson that half hour, and then you might practice 5, 6, 7, 8 hours. You can't count the hours of practice. You can only count the hours under the tutelage of your instructor. So that makes it difficult to get an adequate number of hours. So what we typically do is, if you accrue, between 30 and 40 hours of lesson and performance, and you can count any kind of, like if you're doing a recital, any kind of practice for the recital under the tutelage of the teacher, the performance itself, that can all go in those hours. So you should aim for about 40. Then you should do other theory work, some book work. Have your instructor assign work out of a book, for theory. And what I'm doing is I'm balancing. When I look at the work and I think, okay, this is only really worth 2.5 credits. That's the minimum I can give. I can't give like 1 on a transcript. I can only do a 2.5. So I need to see that there's enough work for a 2.5, and if it's going to be a 5, typically what's going to happen is you're going to have to go to other concerts and do some kind of an assessment of that concert, or you're going to be doing a research paper on a particular composer, or some research that way, just to beef up the content, because typically the per week lesson is just not enough to get 5 credits in a semester. If you're doing some other course like art history or like art appreciation, music appreciation, that's got a textbook that you're following through, then you typically don't have a problem. And if you're doing worship, like a worship band kind of a situation, that can categorize as performance as long as the instructor, the worship leader, is in charge and is actually giving some musical instruction to that. So if you have any questions about what constitutes music credit, then let me know, because that can be kind of different than a regular textbook course. So that's the college prep requirements. The only thing that's really different in the standard diploma, it still requires 240 credits. Bible is the same. The electives are 40 instead of 30. English is the same. Foreign language is 10 instead of 20. But again, you have to know what you want to do after high school, because you don't want to, if you're planning to go to Biola, for example, you're going to need 30 credits of language, and you don't want to just knock on their door with 10. So kind of know what it is you want. Mathematics, there's 3 years again of mathematics, but it can be any mathematics. So you could do consumer math, you could do pre-algebra, you could do algebra 1, and that would all count for your requirements. Physical education is the same, 20 credits. Science is a minimum of 20 credits, the same credit, but any of the sciences can qualify. So physical science typically is an elective, but in the standard diploma, it actually counts as one of your core classes. So you could have physical science and biology, and then you would have satisfied your science requirement. Social studies the same. It's the world history, U.S. history, government, economics. Visual and performing arts is 10 credits as well. Okay. We do also have a modified diploma, which is, it'll say modified diploma on the transcript, but it'll sound like special ed to anyone that is looking at it. So, but if if your student needs that, then this is available for them. So it's 200 credits to graduate, and if you're interested in that, we will give you a form, and you can look through and see the different requirements. It's just a lot less stringent in the requirements. Okay, and I think I've covered just about everything. So if you have any questions, just give me an email. Shoot me an email at lgreen@desertchristian.com, and I'd be happy to answer your questions.